items and red line things that we talked about or made a comment about, and tried to cover as much as I could remember, so that the goal would be to know what our consensus is for this and be able to vote on it next Tuesday. That being said, we are at the mercy of the attorneys, and we are, again, hit with interrogatories and production of documents this week. So I can't promise that Chris McEnany's office will get to the final cut. But I'm going to send it off, hopefully by tomorrow morning, with kind of a consensus, so that he can look through it and say, you can't do this, you should do this, you need to fix this. And then we can have it ready to vote on Tuesday. If not, then rather than waiting until May, I might try to sandwich in a 10-minute workshop to just be able to vote, so we can move this in April. Because the goal, I think, is move this one and move the Bluff Community Center and the kitchen off in April, so that we can focus on litigation, the budget, the EPA in May and June. Everybody okay with that plan? Okay, so I don't know the best way to do this other than maybe just go through it.
Do you mind if I share my screen so everyone's like at the exact same spot?
So you know how to share? Yeah. Please do. I don't know how to do it, so.
Okay, and that way, most folks join online.
Perfect.
And I am gonna work off the PDF, and we'll just add notes, and then we can go back through and clean it up.
Are you able to add notes on, or do I need to do it on paper?
I can add notes.
Okay. So,
Okay.
starting with intent and purposes, I changed the wording. I can't remember what it was, but it wasn't view shed, but it was like the landscape or something. And I think viewscape or view sheds is more of what's used. We can change it back to what it was, which I should probably get that out. Scenic views is what it was. And it felt to me like that's not really a term that's used. So if everybody jump in if you're wanting something different. If you disagree, you have suggestions. I have a hesitation, just from a lawyer's view, about whether we should cite to a case. While that case is the predominant case, Miller versus California, it was a 1973 case, I have a concern, and I'll just be completely open about it. The last 10 years have seen a lot of changes in the Supreme Court. I don't want to have to change an ordinance to change a citation, and obscenity is one of those things that pops up frequently in the Supreme Court. I would like to ask Chris if we should cite to it or take it out. That's just me. Any thoughts? The next piece under definitions.
And if you don't do that, how do you eliminate? Because the free speech thing always comes up in their discussions.
You
and
just
stuff.
say it. Free speech is, you know obscenity when you see it. That's the test.
But there's no, so we would need to write no obscenities or something in this part in replacing that?
I think it's enough to say as defined by case law or the Supreme Court, and again, that's a question for Chris. How would you frame it? Or would you just take it out?
Or just say no obscenities? You have freedom of speech, but no obscenities.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's why I highlighted, just to ask him what to do with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how you address it, but I personally wouldn't cite to a case, and let's let him weigh in on it. My thought would be, and just so you know, when I send things to Chris that we're talking about, I do not offer my opinion. I just say this is the consensus we've got, and go through it, so that he's not swayed by Ann said. So it doesn't go with a comment from me. It'll just go, the things highlighted are things that we've picked out. Okay, the next thing is, I changed the word override to replaces. because override isn't a legal term, and replaces might not be the right word either, but it's not really modifying because it's a standalone. So again, this is something that Chris will look at. And again, if folks want to weigh in on different words or choices. Definitions, I had added under banner, excludes banners carried as a part of a procession or on a vehicle. This has come up a lot with the Trump parades, like what can you have in a vehicle? And I think just make it clear, we're not limiting things on vehicles, it's just what it is. Otherwise, none of us would have a Bluff sticker on our car. I just added a couple edits on an electric sign. I added the word that, and then said, instead of the word they, I added electric signs use various methods of illumination instead of the word they. So are we all good with that page? And any other suggestions that you have?
I'm actually having a hard time hearing you. I don't know if these could be increased or just hearing. Part of it is when you are looking down at something.
Okay.
When you're up, it's, okay.
Okay.
Do we have any,
Just try and just move it a little closer to me and see if that helps.
because
Does
there's
this-
nothing coming out over any speakers in here.
It is-
Because I bet
it
you
is
guys
now.
can't hear. Can you?
it's hard.
Thank you.
There we go.
Okay, yeah, now it sounds like it's coming out of the speaker. Is that working?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I'll try to keep my head up too. So page 1. Would you make a note to number pages?
Yes.
Thank you. So page 1, we'll move to page 2. It starts with height of a sign on page 1. Okay, this is me. I don't know what the radius means when it says within an 8-foot radius of the base of the sign. And if it's clear to everybody else, we'll just delete that.
What they were trying to get was that if you put a sign here, you can't build a hill and put a sign on top of the hill and call it the sign height is from the ground and not from an artificial hill that you make and stick the sign on top of it. So the 8 feet radius would be, you'd have to build a big hill in order to make that work.
Is that clear to everybody but me?
I thought that piece was later about the hill. Well, to start with, this is a radius.
Okay.
That means it's a big thing.
So if everyone's okay with that, I'll just take out my comment. Okay, the next definition was kiosk. So in looking at kiosks, we have a number of them already in town. We have the one at the Great House, we have ours, we have post office, which we can't regulate. And the shaded or has an overhanging roof, I don't know where the language came from, but all the definitions I looked at did not have it. I mean, there may have been one. And I feel like that's kind of burdensome for somebody just having like a kiosk like we have. And then, of course, we don't differentiate between, boy, I can hear the echo. We don't differentiate between a bulletin board and a kiosk. And I think there's a difference between those two things. And so I don't know if we need to be that picky, but given that we've had difficulty with clarity and interpretation, I don't know if we need to do something else with the word kiosk versus a bulletin board. Britt, did you have a chance to measure the Great House?
The sign, I meant that's inside that
Yeah.
gazebo or whatever, yeah, it's 86 inches tall from base to top of the sign. you know, the posts go on higher up to the top of the kiosk, or the top of the, whatever, but the little structure. But, and then the sign itself is 72.5 inches wide, 48.5 inches tall. It's a big old sign. But as far as the shaded and overhanging, I don't see a point in doing that. That's kind of an old school Forest Service thing that actually does fairly little out here to protect the sign or give shade, unless you build an entire gazebo around it. It actually does very little for anything.
Okay, so that might be where that came from, is an older model.
Yeah. Most of the new signs that the feds are putting in or the state don't have roofs on them anymore.
Does it just make it a sign though?
Huh?
Does it just make it a sign though?
No, it makes it a kiosk still, because it's a framed,
A framed
it's an
sign.
H-frame sign with a interpreted panel inside.
And that's part of this definition, is it's educational or directional permanent sign or bulletin board for the public.
I mean,
So I
I
think it's-
don't think the roof makes it a kiosk.
No.
The other thing, in the other definitions of kiosk, it talked about, all of them talked about it, that it has, how was it? Something about the sides are slightly different than having a sign. But we can have Chris look at it. How do people feel about taking out shaded or overhanging roof?
I just take it out, it simplifies it.
Yeah, take it out.
Yeah.
If you want to put one on, great, and if being required to put one on is a little silly, so.
Well, is it prohibited? Without it being identified, is it prohibited to put a roof on it then?
Well, there wouldn't be anything that would prevent them from
Prohibited.
doing it. But I think having them look at the definition to see if we're clear enough between the definition between a kiosk, a bulletin board, and a sign. Otherwise, we don't need all of those. Then we talked about defining a municipal or a municipality, and I thought my thought is leave that to Chris. I think we need to define it because we get to the piece of the municipal government needs to have certain size signs that are gonna exceed our limits in here. And I'm not really sure how we'd wanna define it. If somebody has a definition they want to insert, great, otherwise I thought just let Chris define it.
I'm fine if Chris defines it.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing,
Sometimes they get really technical and, I think that if there's a legal technical definition, that we should just, go with that.
perfect. Mural, the draft said, or other work of art. You know, to me, that's vague. I think that needs to be tightened up, but I don't know how to do it. And it might be that Chris thinks or other work of art is fine, but I thought we'd ask the question. Unless somebody has a definition of what a mural is. So is a mural tagging? If I think tagging is an art, which it is.
Well, and sometimes those are considered murals as well,
Yeah.
especially now.
So I'm just curious what he has to say about it.
Maybe rather than stating a painting, maybe they could say a work of art extruded directly.
Executed.
Extruded, that doesn't make sense. Executed directly on the wall for non-commercial purpose. Because I think that they were probably trying to get at, well, okay, what if it's not a painting, what if it's,
Mixed medium or something?
yeah,
I mean,
a wood block sculpture, or something, you know, so maybe it's a piece of art. But then we get to your thought at the end of the day about who gets to say what's art.
Well, let's let Chris struggle with that one. On non-conforming sign, I just recommend we take out the word means because they don't use it in any other definition and they just go straight to the definition. off-premise sign, I spelled out UDOT, Utah Department of Transportation. Those acronyms get difficult. When we use them, people don't know what they mean. They're not used to them, so that's page 2. Any changes on page 2 people want to talk about that I didn't cover? Then we're at page 3. It's interesting, signs which are a work of art. They define it, and then they say generally with no more than 5% of the sign. I took out the word generally. It's either going to be 5% or it's not, because if it's 5.1, we're going to get into that argument of, did you mean generally 5.1? Because I'm kind of in the ballpark.
So what's the difference between this and a mural?
They're defining the phrase, a work of art, that's in the word mural, or other work of art. So they're defining the word within the definition of mural.
Mm-hmm.
So I would use it as if, okay, let's use Cody's sign or Cody's mural for an example. It's on the side of his business, and if he put Seiko Adventures on, or Seiko somewhere in that sign representing that that's his place of business, then that would be a sign that's a work of art, I think is what they were meaning by that. Whereas right now, it doesn't say anything about Seiko. Steve's doesn't say anything about Twin Ox, the mural, so I think they're saying that you can't have a mural painted on the side of your building that has 3/4 of the mural taken up by your business logo.
Okay,
That's how I interpret it anyways.
yeah, because then they're using the phrase sign area in that phrase. Okay. Under yard sign.
So, hold on just a second. That this sentence in here, the town considers it a work of art compared to a sign. Is that the purpose of that, that it's planning and zoning has to decide it's art and not a huge sign?
Well,
Is that what this is trying to? Okay.
Well, and in my interpretation, it can't, the sign portion of it can't take up more than 5% of the,
So that makes it,
so if you have an 86 is
so it's
is
not
what we
a
have right now.
sign.
You have 160 square feet of wall that you're covering up and have 3/4 of that with your business name on it, then you're going to exceed the sign
So the
limitation that we
town
have.
decides that, not whether it's a work of art.
Well, no, it's saying that,
It's a sign, it's not a work of art, once you exceed that 5%.
right, but
Okay,
what what
okay.
it's saying, yeah, once you exceed the 5% of the project.
Then you're a sign.
Or,
Yeah.
Then you're a sign and you have to
Comply-
go to the
comply
sign,
with the
okay.
sign
Right.
Okay, okay.
And there might be some tweaking to that Chris can do to make it clear that that's what we're saying. But,
No, that's fine. It just seemed like a duplicate to the other, but I think
and
it's
again,
fine.
and that's where that whole idea of what's pornography, what's obscene, and what's a work of art. We're not gonna decide it, we're gonna let some court decide it. We're not gonna go down that path. Yard sign.
Do you want any changes to that, except for removing the generally?
I don't think so. I think we're fine, and maybe just make a note to Chris to look at the definition of mural sign and this one, to make sure we're not conflicting with anything. It took me how many years to figure out this last week how to do redlining? On this computer, I can do it on my other one.
Yeah, because a lot of towns, like down in the south, like they're part of their beautification projects are putting in murals everywhere, and a lot of those murals are just signs for businesses, like right on the side of the business. And it says barbecue, blah, 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 and it has all this stuff, and it's very pretty and it's artistic, but it is advertising the building itself. So they must have a rule that allows that, but, so I can see why you want to clarify it here. So it makes sense to me the way it's written.
And then, then you get the question, is 5% too little or too, I don't know. But I think that's why we have Chris weigh in on this. we're too restrictive, he'll tell us, I hope.
Craig just mentioned that if you're, I know it's weird, but as close as possible, so might it'll reduce your feedback.
I don't like the echo.
He said if you're closer, it'll reduce it.
It'll reduce the echo?
That's what he says.
Okay, Craig, I'm counting on you, because otherwise it's coming back in my ears and it's not comfortable. Okay, yard sign. I just highlighted a small, often rectangular sign. Like, small, what's small? And do we have something on yard signs that would gives us the, okay, yard signs. When you go to the chart, there's nothing that, maybe I'm missing it, but there's nothing that says what small is, like defining small. So now we've got a vague word, small, often rectangular, but in the chart, which is E, and, yeah, we don't have a size delineated.
So should it be in the definition or in the?
Probably in both, but to me, that, again, if we're gonna try to tighten this up, a small, often rectangular, so does that mean often rectangular if I put up a triangle and it's small? So, is everybody okay with Chris looking at what a yard sign is defined as in terms of size? And
Maybe you could say a sign that does not exceed X amount of square feet. Or the area of a number of square feet.
I wonder if it can just be eliminated. It's a sign, and it goes with the sign sizes and the sign, depending on if it's commercial or residential, it's,
you could
Just-
probably combine the one ahead of it, that's before a temporary sign, and make it because a yard sign is generally temporary.
There are many of us who have had our Bears Ears signs up for
Yeah,
a long time now, since 2015, 17.
There is a fairly large yard sign over by your area that's been up for several years, kind of a flag.
but it's,
I mean, it's big.
but that's all regulated in the size on the residential and the size on the commercial. So that's why I don't think we need to say if it's in your yard. What's a yard?
so if you just use, oh, I don't like that echo. If you use the phrase temporary yard sign, where else would people be putting a temporary sign if they didn't put it in their yard? Either their home yard, their business yard. We can let Chris struggle with whether to combine those or do something else unless someone, and we have, until next week ideally to make any suggestions. So I can send this up to him and people can weigh in if they've come up with something in the next week.
Do you not think that maybe they were just trying to address a yard sign as being a sign that maybe a resident would put out in opposition to a business? And just calling attention to the fact that there are some regulations for residential signs as well as commercial signs. That's kind of what I thought they were trying to address with the yard sign designation. I think a lot of times people, if you put some really huge banner up for somebody's birthday or something, they might not even think about the fact that it's, might be some regulation to that.
That's a good point.
Well, and that's where the temporary is defined, 14 days in a calendar year. But the other, I think, kept falling back on free speech.
Well, but a yard sign isn't necessarily considered a temporary sign. If we're saying that you
Right.
can only post it for 14 days, then that would mean that every single person out there would have to go take their yard sign down for
Mhm.
3 days and then put it back. Oh, well, I took it down, now it's back up. It's like Ann said, who's going to police that?
Right, and the way the ordinance is written, it's 14 days in a calendar year. Well, none of us have the time to police
Right.
that. And in here, I recommended we take out the 14 days and try to figure it out some other way. And have Chris tell us how to frame it in a way that it's enforceable, and which is the whole goal, is to start making these enforceable versus we write them and then everybody does what they want to do, and we don't have any way to enforce them. We might as well not even have them if we're going to do that.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, take out both of those, take out temporary and take out yard.
Make them have to be compliant, any sign has to be compliant.
Mm-hmm. And you can leave it up as long as you want, you can put whatever on you want.
So you can make a note that, to Chris, would it be better to just allow the word sign be defined and take out temporary and yard signs and let it fall under signs in the chart? Well, we can see what he comes back with. Then general regulations, I just added some language like bluff planning and zoning, spelling out and. Under exemptions, which is A, under general regulations. When we're talking about realtor signs and political signs and yard signs, it gets really messy because yard signs have a different purpose than realtor signs or political signs, and I don't know how we, again, back to that 14 days, I don't know how we set a time frame that signs can be up. Like, common sense is if I've sold my house and I actually get to the closing, I want that realtor sign down, as do they. Political, not necessarily.
That's not always the case in Bluff. I've seen the realtors or the realtor sell a house and then, okay, I'm done coming to Bluff. And that sign doesn't come down for months after it's already been sold.
So you'll see, I didn't address that, thinking about that one, but in enforcement, I included a remedy of removal of the sign. Because that's the easiest one to do. If you're not compliant, and we give you the warning letter, and you still say, I'm not doing it, that's the easiest method of enforcement. You send a letter, tell them they have X number of days to remove it, or we'll remove it, and then we remove it. So, that's a good point. I didn't think of it with realtor signs, but how does that, under exemptions, any changes, additions, things you want me to take out?
Well, if we need to put a note in there that if we're talking about removing yard signs and temporary signs from the definitions, that we
Yeah, well, you're right.
remove them from other places too, which would eliminate 3 and 4 and 5.
Yeah, and I took 5 out of the exclusions. You'll see further down, I took the municipal signs out and didn't make them an exclusion, but put them in the chart.
So I'm hearing correctly, you just want to strike 3, 4, and 5 from the exemption section?
Well, if we don't talk about them in definitions,
But they
I
would be,
Okay, so remove the term yard sign, temporary sign, if not defined.
I think that, to me, that would be a question for Chris, like, to make this consistent. Do we leave the definitions in? Do we take them out? Do we take 3, 4, 5 out? How do you reconcile those two pieces?
I think you would leave 5 in myself. I like what you added. It's sort of like if you were doing any road work or anything and you had a sign in the middle of the road or in the right of way or whatever. I mean, municipal, there needs to be a little wiggle room.
What if you're a business though, and you receive a large grant and, you know, similar rules apply to you as a business on your construction site for this grant that the town is having to, I mean, I have seen that happen before, especially with grant funding, is they want you to give notice of who you're receiving this funding from.
So he could reword that, or,
But on those sign, I think on those businesses and stuff, they wouldn't expect you to put up a huge thing that was
No, but-
beyond the sign ordinance.
No, but we do talk about having like on, I think there's a spot in there that says specifically about like construction signs can have one, you know, one, I want to call them fence sign or something with the contractor's name on it. Oftentimes, especially if you get a bigger project, you have your contractor and you have lots of subs who also want to, you know, get some advertising in on those as well. And I kind of think that's kind of similar to, you know, if we have our contractors and then USD, brought to you by USDA or whatever. So maybe, can't remember exactly where it is, but maybe we don't limit it to one. I think it was limiting to one sign in that department. I'm thinking of the elementary school in specific. When they were building the elementary school, they had several, you know, contractor signs on their fence.
But we don't have a limited number of square feet on this draft, so they
Right.
could put up as many, you just can't put up one huge sign. You could put up several along your fence.
Is it not in this draft, or am I mixing up drafts here that we talked about, there can only be one?
no,
Well,
it is
we'll
in,
get there later.
it is in here, in one of, in the chart, E. Yeah. And that's, you know, looking at the EPA grant, for example,
Oh, one per inch.
and state grant, there are requirements on, it has to be at least so big.
Mhm.
And under the infrastructure bill, Jen's right, private businesses do qualify for some of that funding, and they would fall under the same federal guidelines. So Chris, I mean, he'll have a way to tweak that, but that's a good point. We've got to be able to distinguish those signs that are required as a result of grants, regardless of who is getting the grant.
And I think we can just adjust that when we get to that table.
Okay.
'Cause
Anything else on A? Then B, prohibited signs. We bounced around so much on the blinking, flashing, moving flag things that I'm not sure that I captured changes. So I think 1 and 2 are fine. 3, 4, and 5, everybody look at that and see if this meets kind of the consensus as to what we wanted to do.
Erin, can you pull the font up on that a little bit? It's hard to read the red there with the strikeout.
Might have had it. Is this like an eye exam? Is it better, is 1 better, 2 better? So what it would read would be moving figures or inflatable figures. And it took out waving, balloons, banners, streamers, pinwheels, moving or rotating signs, promotional flags, moving. And then it starts up, so it picks up the first word, moving, down to the second word for figures or inflatable figures. So what would be excluded, the way I moved it around would be just what's excluded, moving figures or inflatable figures. But I did not take out except those erected temporarily. So I had no idea what we talked about as a consensus. And then I just noted that 14 days, calendar days, is really hard to track I mean, if I put it up at, and it's picking at things, but that's what happens. We all pick at it. So if I put it up at 6 at night, is it 14 days from 6 at night, or is it 14 days from the day I put it up? Do we want a number of days, or do we just
Well,
say
the other
what we?
thing that you could have more than one event that you used a similar sign for, so if we're doing it for a calendar year, then, okay, what if we get a jumping jack flag, whatever thing to promote the balloon festival, and then they wanna use it again for the art festival, do they then have?
Yeah, I would lean towards just taking it off after inflatable figures. Just don't have exceptions to it. Just have a standard for those signs and
That we
don't
just
have
don't want 'em.
yeah, just those inflatable bouncy ones.
Does that work for everybody, or do you want it different?
I mean, that's
Okay?
my suggestion, but
No, I just honestly couldn't remember where we were, and I didn't want to go
well,
back and listen to the
I'm
tape.
just one say, but I think that I think that's something that as a town, we can say we don't really want those inflatable things up and down the road, but that's my opinion.
Okay.
And then we don't have to do the temporary, trying to get rid of the temporary thing, just
Yep.
go with things. And it opens it back up to put your banners up, you can put balloons up, you can put all those things up, but just eliminating these mechanical ones.
I just took out 5 based on what we were talking about, but if you want it in, I can put it back in. And then in 7, I think we need to have a defined amount of time. So if somebody has a broken, damaged, or unmaintained sign, we need to say, how long can you have that before you have to get it fixed or it goes? And to me, 12 months seems a little long, except it's 6 months, like if you're your business that's seasonal, 6 months might not be long enough. I'm looking at Jen and Lou, since you have ongoing businesses right now.
I think that if we're doing it, as a safety hazard, then 6 months is not too long, because if it's a safety hazard, it could fall down and hurt somebody tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there's a big difference between it being broken and damaged and it being a nuisance or safety hazard.
Right.
And maybe
Right.
maybe more time to fix your damaged, broken sign, but less time to fix your nuisance, safety hazard sign.
I kind of have a hard time with the wording of nuisance, because what's our term nuisance? No, I mean, to me, that's a very subjective term. What might be a nuisance to me might not be a nuisance to you, or might,
And that opens up the targeting too.
Right.
You know. It's a nuisance to me, so I'm gonna write a letter about it.
No, you write it and email at 2 in the morning. That's what you do. Okay, so let's ask, do we just eliminate nuisance, or do you define it? Because there are
Yeah.
legal definitions for nuisance, so.
I think you just take it out.
How long do you want for this? I think then safety hazard fixed within time period, and then broken damage fixed within what kind of time period?
I can live with whatever the months are, so 6 months.
I think 12 months and just identifying it, and then it's their reason to fix it too. They've been notified, it's a safety hazard. If it hurts somebody, they're even in that much more of a predicament. It's not really our problem.
Okay, so don't break them into 2 separate.
Because 6 months is a long time to leave a safety hazard up. I mean, that's,
I think just,
leave it at 12 and let them fix it.
so Lou, if I'm understanding what you're saying, number 7 would say, signs that are broken, damaged, or unmaintained for more than 12 months, and then, or which present a nuisance or safety hazard for more than 6. Or are you saying 12 for both?
I would just leave it at 12 for both, because if there's actually a safety hazard, then 6 months or 12 months doesn't really matter. It's somebody deciding it's a safety hazard, and it must not be if it can still stay there for 6 more months.
I feel like it's just two separate lines, right? So if it's been unmaintained or broken for 12 months, it's not allowed. If it's a safety hazard, it's not allowed. Right?
I kind of
Yeah, I
agree
can
with
do
that.
both.
See, it's just not allowed.
Yeah, so I'll break this up.
Well, and actually, that's where the remedies come in, because if it's a safety hazard, it's got to come down anyway, and we send a letter, and they don't move it, and it's hanging, and we take it down. Okay.
So two separate.
Yep.
And just take out the nuisance part, just leave the top line to 12 months.
I'd really like to see what Chris says on the nuisance part. I'd like to see what his weigh-in is and what the definition would be. And then we can, hopefully we'll get it back.
So if you were gonna leave the nuisance part in, you would probably leave it in the unmaintained part, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Probably move it up there, yeah. Everybody okay with those questions and sending that part up? Okay, non-conforming signs. So my question is, does this mean that anything that was up basically gets a pass, and we start with passing this ordinance? So I don't want that to be a question down the road.
That means to me.
Does everybody or somebody have a different opinion?
Are the wavy and bending banners permanent?
The banners are, yeah, so they can be permanent.
But they're,
But
in this draft, they're back in anyway.
I didn't hear.
We said the same thing. If we're going with our recommendations, we're eliminating that distinction, we're eliminating them as a non-approved sign, so.
But there are other non-conforming signs in addition to those. And so it's
But he's wondering
Just-
what qualifies as permanent, so.
anything that we didn't say has a time frame or is excluded.
Except for dark sky things, but I don't think we have a problem with that anyway.
No, that's a separate ordinance, the exterior
But I mean,
lighting.
as far as non-conforming at this time, that would be one that it has its own ordinance that says you have to comply. But I don't think we have any that are in that category anyway. Unless we light up the Bluff Elementary School.
Would you just make a note on C to Chris? Do we need to specifically reference the exterior lighting sign?
We've already got the dark skies, as long as we don't add more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it just stands alone, but let's ask him.
Okay.
If it
No,
has to be
that-
noted in
I
there.
think that's fine.
Okay, I just changed the wording of 1 under C1.
Wait, I didn't make a note.
Whoops.
Going back to just C. So,
Just put point on the C, and
yeah, so do you want me to make any notes there?
just ask Chris whether we need to specifically reference.
Right, but
Oh,
this, your notation there,
Oh.
do you want to,
just take it out. Yeah, thank
Alright,
you.
so keep it permanent, non-conforming
Yeah.
signs.
So any questions on C1, where I just reworded it? I have a hard time when we have multiple kind of negative things in the sentence, and that's just me. It's easier to say it can't exceed a year. Jen, what are you thinking?
Trying, well, no, it's fine. I'm just thinking about some specific things, but I think it's fine.
Okay. Then we go to the next page. Wait. So it would be page 5, that starts with number 4C at the top.
And on this number 4, in this, where you've added, it may be restored in the same non-conforming sign, probably to the same non-conforming sign, maybe?
Yeah, the phrasing is,
Maybe to it instead of in it.
probably the word sign should be a different word, to the same non-conforming, whatever. Okay, is there anything else up to that point? Or can we go to D, the commercial sign tables?
It's just that update within 1 year, because it's doing that same thing,
Yeah.
completed no later than 1 year from
Yeah.
the date.
Right. Okay, so everybody's heard me say this a lot, math is not my strong point. We have 86 square feet in C1, C2, C3. So before we get to lose concern about the size, actually, if you're making a sign, how do you make, what are the dimensions for 86 square feet?
That's what I'm trying to calculate right now. This is where we
There's
need
two,
Linda.
there are two signs. You can have one by 86 or two by 43.
Okay, so if you look at C1, C2, C3, maximum total square footage, maximum height. So then it refers to sign table E.
Linda, could you break it out, like, okay, so we have 86 square feet. I'm trying to think of sheets of plywood, because that's something that I can visualize in my head. Sheet of plywood is a 4 by 8 sheet of plywood, so that's 32 square feet. So if I divide 86 by 30, I'm trying to, because I've been watching billboard, I've been paying particular attention to this in my drives from Flagstaff to Bluff. The billboards that are outside of Kayenta are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 8 sheets of plywood, essentially. So they're very large. That's really large. So I'm trying to think if we had 32 and 32, maybe Almer's better at this because he has these figures in his head, but,
One sheet of plywood is 32.
32.
So if
Two
you
and a
have
half
2 of them, you've
sheets.
got 64, and 3 of them you go over. So you have 3 sheets of plywood, and that's probably a little bigger than, that's probably 4, I guess that's 4 feet tall, that board there, but it's a little longer than 8.
Well, so like if you look at, on the next page, which is 6, and you go down to pylon, pole, ground mounted, 86 square feet, you can have 1. So that you've got off dimensions in my mind. You don't have like 80 square feet, 8 by 10. You've got 86. And
Because of that chart that they
yeah,
used.
to me, I don't know where 86 comes in, why we can't just use 80, because that's kind of a multiplier number, 8 times 10. And that's where my math is bad. I don't understand how we, without having inches factored in versus
I think
feet.
they probably figured in 86 when they were trying to calculate font size that you would
Yeah.
need to calculate speed down the road. I think that's where the 86
Okay.
feet came in.
Okay.
But
Well, if everybody else understands it and it's fine, I'm fine with it.
Well, it's really limiting. I mean, if it's 84, you have all kinds of
Well, you
different
don't-
dimensions.
well, you don't
You
have
have
to
to
do
make it that
86, you
big.
have up to 86.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
you don't
it-
have to make it 86, it's
Oh.
just that that's the maximum
You
size.
can't exceed 86 square
Okay.
feet.
And the-
But you don't have to make it 80s.
And it's this sign company, it was a sign association that, between Diana and, I
And
guess
Malia.
Malia took that sign ordinance that Diana found and said, at this speed, you need this much room for your font to be that size. And that's where I argue, it's like, well, that's for 40, we're aiming at 30, let's make everything
Yeah, but
slow
we're not,
down.
and made the point that we're not at 30 yet, and even
Right,
if we
right.
were at 30, that still doesn't mean we don't have people driving through at 65.
No, and that's just
So-
where we disagree, so,
Yeah.
but this just says this is the max, so it'd be like 10 feet high, so, take a 6-foot person, and it's almost 2 6-feet people, and 8 feet wide.
Yeah, and I can understand that part of it. That's easy for me.
Just
The
on how
86
they-
is not easy for me.
That's the sign association,
Okay.
and so we're just sticking to their
Okay.
parameters.
And that's what I wanted to know, so
Yeah,
thank you.
That's where they got that.
Okay, then we'll just take out that, whoops, sorry, that red line stuff. So Lou's comment was that she didn't think the signs would be big enough if we, and the speed reduction, and to me, that's just speculation. But to get a consensus, do we want Chris to give an opinion on that? Do we want to just say the consensus is it's A, B, or C? Any
On
thought?
where? I'm sorry, and where?
Under D, where I put it in red, are these signs too big if the speed limit is reduced? That was your comment. And so, for the purposes of getting an opinion from Chris, do we want an opinion, or is the consensus that the rest of us, I mean, how close are we on a consensus, I guess, because we can ask for a legal opinion about what he thinks.
I mean, I'm fine with going off the speed limits we got and not for what we hope to have. And it's still, to me, it's like town limits go to 60 miles, 65 miles an hour too, like, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, like having them for the smallest possible, when people will be at, could put something in a 65. I don't know, I tend to lean towards the 40 is a good split between the two, the 40 mile an hour target, unless we have a separate one for each speed zone, like, so, I would say 40. If that's the intention of the 86.
I would like, I think that they, I'm trying to remember what they based it off of when I was listening to planning and zoning when she came up with this.
I think they use the actual speed limit that we have.
45.
No, it's at 40.
At
40?
Because it's
Oh,
40,
okay,
yeah.
well, yeah, I think that's fine. I don't think we need to reduce the sign for slower.
Mhm.
And I don't think we need to increase it for the
Right.
busier, because Brant's right, once you get, a mile out of town, it increases to 65. And we do have private landowners out there that could put signs out there, but we're not gonna say, okay, now let's go to the 65, which means you can now go up to,
But your issue is that all of that land is not zoned, none of that land outside of town is zoned as commercial, so it's kind of a moot point, because you've got your other zones
right.
with much
Right.
smaller.
And we all know that if Sitla wants to put a sign up, they will. So,
So I'd say the consensus is not my 30 mile an hour. So-
I would love to be on the council when we drop it to 30, and I would be
Okay.
very happy.
It'll be soon.
On the next page, which is 6, the question I have is the 86 square feet. We'll just leave that as it is under pylon. I believe under the temporary animated wind sign, windlass, waving, banner, feather, to be consistent, I just took animated and wind sign, but is that what we're talking about? We're just saying animated or excluded, but everything else is okay, and then these are the things that we want. And then I just put in how many do we want? Do we want to leave it at not applicable and somebody can put up 20? Do we want to have any restrictions on temporary, or just take that out?
I think it just goes out myself.
Okay.
I would like to see more than one, because I think that you have directional traffic coming from both ways, and it's, if you're trying to slow somebody down and they don't see, you know, that until you're at your driveway, then you've missed that traffic. So I would like to see at least two.
Do you want-
On the moving or waving,
Yes.
Do
instead
you
of
want a number, or do
taking
you
out.
just want to leave it to the taste of the business owner?
Well, I think that in order to accommodate the people who don't like those, we don't want to see a business put a 20 in a one-block area. So, but I would like to see more than one.
So that 3 is what's proposed in there at the moment. That's what we kind of talked about the last time.
Well, and I think if you have a bunch, it's distracting.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's 3,
Yeah.
you know, it's, you can kind of maybe take in 3, but if there's I think it would be a hazard.
Put in 3?
Three.
3 total? Is
And
everybody
then-
okay? Does everybody live with 3?
So then you have a question mark on the size of these moving or waving signs.
So is that, when we're talking about temporary, is that what we're talking about? So,
I thought we were going to eliminate the temporary part.
okay. So take out temporary, animated, and then leave the rest in?
And then on the moving or waving, you would take out the temporary also.
Well, and this is confusing too, because all the other max sizes have like a maximum square footage, and then this is the only one that says 20 feet height from ground. So is it a
So-
square footage, is it how tall they are?
Well, they're not going, conventional ones right now, I guess we can't really say that, because who knows what they come up with the next latest and greatest advertising technology. But yeah, I think that we could put a size restriction on those, not to exceed.
In this wind, I'm just picturing somebody putting up 86 square feet,
Right.
and it's going to be ripped to whatever. So what would you propose?
I would take the 20-foot height from the temporary animated that we're crossing out, according to my notes, and put it on the moving or waving a max of 20 feet.
Okay, I've already taken out temporary, animated, and we
Okay.
have left
And then,
wind.
so then the 20 feet height that was in that temporary signage, just put it on the moving or waving so that there
Which
aren't.
is already there, right?
Well,
Right.
that's the one that's got the question marks.
Where's their
No.
question mark?
Yeah, I don't see a question mark on that one.
Are you looking at an old draft?
Well, let's see. Okay, so you've updated it, yep.
Oh,
The
yeah,
one
I
that's in the-
updated it last night. That's what I apologized for. Well,
Okay.
not an apology.
Okay, no, I
My
can see
commentary.
it. I just couldn't see it on
Yeah.
this screen.
I went
but-
through and cleaned up based on Erin's notes.
So I think the only question we have with that is striking temporary, animated, and then not to, and just saying not to exceed 3 rather than 1 per entrance,
Yep.
not to exceed 3.
Mhm.
Okay,
And then,
And then removing the temporary part of it. So
yeah,
just-
scratch
yeah,
that
just
altogether.
remove that
Yeah.
completely. Duration,
Yep.
not applicable. Got it.
And then that stands for the one underneath it, temporary event signs. Do we want to just remove temporary?
mhm.
Okay, we'll remove temporary and the restrictions.
And yard signs, you just X that one, right?
Well, I think, let me go back. Yeah. Okay.
So are we taking yard signs out completely on that? Otherwise, they don't have any regulation
Right.
and can stay as long as they want and can be as tall as they want and anywhere. Seems a little bit counterproductive. seems like we need to just take yard signs off of that table.
Well,
Well, there aren't really any restrictions to them on that table anyways, because it all says NA.
right,
Right, that's what I'm worried about. You can put a yard sign up and go without any regulation.
But that's just,
if we're going to regulate the yard signs, then we need to go back up to the definitions and not remove yard signs, which I'm fine with, doing it either way.
So in zone D,
But-
or sorry, in, item D, commercial sign so it says commercial sign table. So that's talking about commercial signs and gives a maximum square footage in residential areas. Do you remove the word commercial and it's just zone sign table? Because that does limit the maximum square footage of those types of signs if you are removing the definition for temporary sign, yard sign. And it just says, it's a sign.
It's a sign. And
In
what-
this zone, it can't be larger than this square
Mhm.
footage.
That's what I think would
So
make sense.
remove commercial from here, and then it would just, a sign would fall into whatever zone it's in, and then that's the max square footage.
I agree with that.
So I'm going to remove commercial and change it probably just to like,
Sign table
sign, yeah, sign table,
with zones or something,
or zoned, something, okay.
Yeah.
I'll work something out. And then we're gonna remove yard sign from table E. And temporary, if that's it.
So what if you remove yard signs? I want to think about that, but yeah, for the purposes of sending this to Chris, yes, let's do it that way then. Okay, are we ready to move to the next page, which is 7? And fixing the margins, which I didn't do. H. I recommended that we take out the word demonstrate and provide, and say provide written permission, so that, I don't know what demonstrate means. Is everyone okay with that, or do you want a different word? Do you want to leave demonstrate in?
Yeah, that works for me also.
Anyone it doesn't work for? Okay, then looking at, under enforcement, is there anything, before we get to enforcement, that you want changed or talk about on F, G, H, I? Then we're down to J.
We'll just have that same question of nuisance under I for Chris.
Okay.
How,
Have that be consistent
how,
one way or
how,
another.
when we're on the maintenance area, if it's not maintenance, the sign is prohibited.
Subjective.
Well,
Like, who decides if it's maintained?
Well, that's why we get enforcement.
But how does the enforcer decide it's maintained?
Trying to
I'm
find-
kind of trying to think of historic signs in town as much as any, and some peeling paint.
Well, if you leave them for 50 years, then they're historical.
Right.
And actually, the reference to B9 doesn't work because there is no B9.
That's what I was trying to figure out.
Yeah, there is no B9. It would be B7 that we're talking about. Not 9.
I could see someone, well, to me, one way that this could come back, and this is especially applicable with the vinyl signs because they have a tendency to fade kind of quickly, but someone wanting to hold a place with a vinyl sign in order not to lose their, I don't know what term we're supposed to use if it's not grandfather, and I know Amanda picks on that a lot, but I don't know what the,
Grandfathered's fine.
holding a place for a sign that has been grandfathered.
But then
If
it's non-conforming sign, and so you wouldn't be able to put up something that was a new non-conforming sign.
But if you're just replacing a vinyl sign, I'm thinking of one in particular which has been replaced. But
Are we
does it-
defining the material?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's upkeep and you want it to be a readable sign, and it's a vinyl sign that fades and is no longer readable and usable, then they're going to have to replace it with something in order to keep that sign upkept.
Oh, because the definition in non-conforming is, which has been continuously maintained.
Do you have a suggestion as to what you want? Or do you want to think about it a week while we get Chris to go through and then everybody look at it again?
There was
A
something
sign
else in
owner
here.
or property owner shall properly repair or replace any sign that is damaged, defective, or which presents a nuisance or safety hazard or persons or property. If not maintained, the sign is prohibited in accordance with B.
So is a calamity, windstorm, or sunstorm, because like non-conforming signs number 4, it says restoration is completed no later than 1 year from the date of the calamity that caused the use to be discontinued. So is a calamity a windstorm or sun bleaching? So you have a year, basically, I'd say is the way people would read that. You have a year to fix your
To maintain it.
non-conforming sign, to maintain it and get it back into a good situation.
And we all agree we're talking about B7, not B9, right? Okay. So do you want to just leave it as it is? Do you want to take out any words? Do you want to add to it?
Remove promptly, because I have a very different definition of promptly than other people, and just reference 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
My promptly is like,
Today.
Tomorrow.
no, actually, probably within like 2 years. No. It's probably tomorrow.
I would say with you, it's yesterday. But it's already
So
done.
we'll
Okay.
tighten that to 1 year.
Okay.
And then, yeah, just this enforcement.
So moving to J, I added to 5, including the remedy or removal of the sign, because that is by far the easiest remedy. You give notice, you provide them with whatever Chris says the proper notice is, you wait the 30 days and then remove it. Other thoughts on that? Any changes that you want to make to enforcement?
Do we have to define the notice duration, the notice length, or is that just?
It does, yeah, it does say 30 days to cure or abate.
Got it, okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Nope. And again, that's the piece I really want Chris to look at, is the enforcement piece, like, how realistic is any of this?
So in reality, if I'm hearing what you're saying correctly, we notify the business that they have a non-conforming sign. They have 1 year to fix that sign. In 1 year, if that fix is not, or if that sign is not repaired, replaced, whatever, we issue a 30-day, you've been out of compliance for over a year. If this is, you have 30 days to take care of this, or we will.
And in terms of enforcement, I think if our goal in the strategic plan is to get enforcement in place, then those policies that we have, when we get them set up from the practical view, we may end up having to add something for enforcement that is very specific. But at this point, this is about as good as we're going to get for enforcement until we have an actual person in process. Does that make sense?
We do have a little bit of a precedent, which it isn't a sign, but we had the problem with the the hangar at the airport.
Right.
And we talked to him,
Right.
Chris sent a letter, eventually, we would have removed it if he hadn't.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's doable.
What did you do, remove it like 2 days before his time was up, but it did get removed.
Yeah,
It
the
worked.
problem was solved.
Yep. So does this, are we good for sending this off to Chris, putting it on the agenda for next week for a vote?
Yes.
And so that we're all on the same page, we cancel tonight so that we could do a longer work session today and people wouldn't be burnt out, but we're holding a meeting next Tuesday. Okay, and we'll get those notices out then. Do we want to take a break at this point before we start in?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's take 10 minutes. It is 10:18. And I'm pausing the recorder. I'm turning the recorder back on. It's 10:29 a.m. We're still in our work session for today, which is April 16th, 2024. So the next thing is a discussion of the Bluff Community Center and the Fire Mesa Kitchen contracts and use. First of all, what I tried to do was go through and make some notes on all of our buildings. So there's notations on the Bluff Community Center, on the pavilion, on Fire Mesa Kitchen, and then some additional considerations. And I appreciate that the coffee shop gave us, along with Malia Collins, some suggested forms and suggested uses, how the cleaning could be approached, some fee schedules. But I thought it would be easiest to break it out by pieces versus trying to lump it all together. And if we lump it all together at the end, that's fine. But I think in terms of working through what changes we want to make or what changes we could do and what isn't doable. So let's start with the Bluff Community Center. Right now, and again, I was doing this yesterday, putting everything together, so if there's a mistake, I apologize, somebody correct it. But right now, and Linda and I worked on this together yesterday, the rent for half a day is $125, and for a whole day is $200. There isn't a weekend rate that I'm aware of. So we could keep the contract as it is, or we could change rental amounts, or we can lump it in down the road with Fire Mesa Kitchen discussion. Cleaning fees are $40 for a half a day, $75 for a full day. In talking with Linda, it really doesn't seem like for the cleaning fees that we, half a day, full day, it really depends on what the use is. If people are bringing in food, it's messier, but they can bring in food for half a day or full day. And so we were just talking about maybe go to a flat fee for half a day, full day, and make that piece easy, like at $50. And when people have it for a weekend, like the Balloon Festival, I would hope that we actually check to make sure toilet paper is available
Right.
and all that. And then the other piece of it was, in my mind, we had voted to waive rental fees but not cleaning for nonprofits. I know there was some confusion among the council as to whether we actually voted to do that or we just talked about it. But I put in here waiving the fee for nonprofits or government entities. Also, right now, we don't charge for classes like skating or group activities. I just realized, I was just told by Kathy Carson, Girl Scouts no longer meet here and haven't for a year, so that was my example.
Well, but I think it's a valid example because we only moved Girl Scouts because it was more convenient to meet at Cedar Mesa. There could be another group similar to Girl Scouts that would like to.
And then the audio-visual equipment rental, I'd like to, Malia, put together a list of what we've got. We've lost 2 HDM, whatever those cords are. We've lost 2 of them in the last 6 months when we've rented. So she has a checklist. $25 for the rental of the equipment is what we're charging, or what's been recommended by Malia. I like a deposit, and I know that's kind of a pain, but I don't know how we collect if they walk off with the equipment, or somebody walks off with it, or we lose it. And so I'd like to see a deposit of $100. And then leaving the room as it is. And I think that's a good thing to have in the contract and emphasize. Malia probably does, but people come in, they pull out all the tables, they pull out the chairs, and then they leave. And we're kind of left with pulling the balloons off the ceiling and cleaning up the stuff on the floor. So that's looking at Bluff Community Center. Looking at the, yeah, go ahead, Linda.
What I like about this contract, which is the original contract we've been using for a lot of years, is that it's really understandable and readable for the clients that want to use the community center, which is people here, people across Montezuma Creek, people that are in the town for some reason that live someplace else. I mean, there's a lot of different people that want to rent the venue. And so the current contract, to me, with a couple changes like Ann's talking about, is working really well. I think if we leave it the way it is, it's simple, it's easy for Malia to do, it's easy for Pat to do. That's just my recommendation.
Other thoughts? And I think that the kind of opposing thing would be do we really want to tie this to the discussion about the kitchen and the rentals on the kitchen? Or do we just want to have this building stand alone and use it like we've been using it with some fine tuning of the contract?
I think it makes sense that if it's working for this building, that we leave it for this building. I do agree that it seems like, to me, if you're cleaning for a half day or a full day, I like the idea of just having one rate, because I want them to come in and clean everything they're supposed to come clean, regardless of, regardless of whether it was half day or a full day. And yes, maybe it's a little messier for a full day, but not necessarily.
You still have to hit everything.
Yeah, I mean, you still have to clean what you have to clean. Sometimes, sometimes when you're cleaning a hotel room, you're gonna have a person who is neat, sometimes you're not. And it all still has to be done. Sometimes you get a little break and sometimes you don't. Luck of the draw. But, so I like that idea. I'm just going from my recollections, but if we have someone who's in here for a weekend or something, yes, it's good to check toilet paper, or at least tell people where the toilet paper supply is. But I know for the balloon festival, they haven't come in and cleaned. So I think if we just charge one cleaning fee rather than $75 a day for cleaning, if nobody's coming in and cleaning, then I don't think we've ever charged that. Have we? I mean,
Per day?
yeah, like,
I think it actually says in here that we clean on the last day.
yeah.
So one cleaning
One
fee.
cleaning fee per rent. So if a group comes in and rents it for the whole weekend, we only charge one cleaning fee,
Right.
so.
Yeah, and like the photography group, they come in for 5 days.
Right,
And
right.
we only clean on the last day.
Yeah.
Right.
And I had asked Linda, because I wasn't sure if the folks doing the cleaning get paid hourly, or do they actually get the cleaning fee, and it's just the hourly rate, so. So I think changing it maybe to 50 and then making some of these fine tuning pieces on the rental of the equipment. What do you think about the deposit? I know it's a pain.
I think it's a good idea, and I question, I question if $100 honestly is enough. If somebody walks out with a projector or something like that, we're not gonna replace it for $100. But you are gonna, if
What's our-
somebody walks out with an HDMI cable and you still keep their $100 deposit, then yes, you're gonna replace. It's kind of similar with the cleaning. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't, but.
Do you know what our deductible is? I don't either. Maybe we should just look at what the deductible is for next week and talk about that. Because if the deductible for the projector is going to be like 200, well, maybe if they're running the projector, we make it the deductible so we're not out money.
So this looks like, or are proposing just $100 deposit if they do AV stuff, not for the whole community center.
No, just if they do the AV.
See, I think you should have a deposit to rent the whole thing, just to keep things, the checklist easier to check. Because they stay until the checklist is done, they get their deposit back once they're checked out.
And one of the things that I appreciate being raised in the drafts that that Malia and the coffee shop did is that talked about a credit card. We are not set up yet for credit card transactions. It's something that we need to get done, but we just haven't had the time to sit down and do a couple of those things. So it's people either pay by cash, check, or money order. And so far for the community center, that has not been an issue. People are pretty used to it. So is everyone okay with making some fine tuning to the community center contract and letting that stand alone?
So what about the pavilion, that's part of the community center or not?
Now did you get the information
I
from
have
last
the
night?
one in the packet.
Yeah, the pavilion's separate. Okay, so.
Okay, it's number 7 on
Yeah.
the packet.
Right. So right now, we don't charge for the pavilion, and to me, it doesn't, just this is my thinking, it doesn't make any sense to charge for the pavilion. However, when you have somebody use it for a full day, like a garage sale, they fill up the dumpster. And the cost of emptying the dumpster one more time during the week is $29. I think that that's reasonable to charge for the trash removal, because they have an option. They can take it to Sand Island, they can put it in their own trash. I mean, they have options. But if they choose to use the dumpster, I don't think if they're using something for free that we should have to pay for it. Again, if people want to do it differently, I'm fine with it.
Well, I guess what I'm wondering is the Bluff Community Center stands alone 1 through 6.
Right,
And then there's going to be another one that's the pavilion.
correct.
Okay. So it'll be.
Well,
pavilion.
we could lump it together. If you're using the community center, you could use the pavilion at no cost. I mean, that's not what I'm saying, but for the purposes of discussion about when people are just using the pavilion.
Yeah, I just don't know how they even know who to pay. You know, if they just drive up, if it's some organized event, we can
That's what I'm
suggest
talking-
that they,
Well, that's what I'm talking about, is
like, if they reserve it somehow.
for any full day use. I'm not talking about the family that comes in and has the picnic. I'm talking about the full day use, like the garage sale.
Do we have a way to reserve the pavilion currently?
People have been calling Malia to ask if they want it for a full day. They've been calling. I don't think we've, at least as far as I know, and Linda has a pretty clear shot of the pavilion. Do you see people there for a full day with a whole bunch of people, like with an event?
No, people come for a picnic, and sometimes they're party, or their kids can play, and, yeah, it's a limited amount of time that people use it
Yeah.
for.
I'm just talking about when you have somebody who's going to do a setup like a art sale or a garage sale.
Well, I think the Manly Marathon is a perfect example of that. When they're here, they take up the pavilion for the whole day that they're here.
Mhm. And they do reserve with
Yeah,
Malia.
But when they're reserving that, are they reserving the building as
They use the
well, or-
bathrooms, yeah.
Yeah, so they're reserving the building as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah. So they don't reserve, we don't let them in here.
right?
They just get to use the bathrooms, and we don't charge for the bathrooms.
I think we charge them
Or
25.
do we?
Because it's for 2 days, and so,
Well, there is cleaning that goes along with that, and trash and everything else, so
Water.
maybe we just, rather than saying, maybe if you want to reserve the pavilion, we apply a $30 reservation. That does cover bathrooms and trash and things like that.
Pavilion with the use of the bathrooms. Has a rental fee.
Does that cover the cleaning, though? You know, we have to adjust that fee to make sure that it covers trash and cleaning. Because if it's $29 to pick up the trash and the dumpster gets full, and then
Yeah.
you have to pay Patricia, however, X amount to clean the bathrooms, which are probably gonna be disgusting after a full day of people tramping in and out.
So maybe $50 or something, pavilion, reserve the pavilion and open the bathrooms.
Okay. So if we did $50,
Well, I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know that that's a great number, but
well, if we said, there's a $50 fee for using the pavilion and we leave the bathroom open, unless you're renting the community center, which that's included in your cost.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Does everybody,
And when so they can reserve the pavilion and the community center. They can say they want both.
well, I think that, I don't know that we have to have them say that they want the pavilion if they're reserving the community center. They can certainly do that, but,
Well, just to keep somebody else from reserving the pavilion, or because they're using the community center, it wouldn't overlap, I guess. They could just use it, but they couldn't access the bathrooms if this was already rented.
Well, a good example for that would be when Business Owners of Bluff reserves the community center for the balloon festival, we don't necessarily reserve the pavilion as well. I mean, somebody could come have another party at the pavilion, but then do they get access to the bathrooms also? Is that,
Yeah, see, I think it'd have to be when it wasn't reserved here. Otherwise, you just use it and go on your way.
well, let's think back to the last 3 years. Have we ever had a situation where the community center was rented and somebody was, and they were planning on using the pavilion, and then somebody else wanted the pavilion for an event? I think that, let's just leave that one to the manager to figure out. Because I think we're gonna just, if we go through every possible scenario, we'll drive ourselves crazy. I think if we have a policy for each, and if there's an exception, the manager knows to come to us and figure it out.
yeah, I'm okay with that. Yeah, I like the idea of having another option as just to rent the pavilion, though.
Yeah, and I think when people think about, like, the garage sale that happened, other people they'll get in their radar, like, hey, I could do this and not have it at my house.
Right.
And it's outside, and you don't have to rent the whole community center, so it's a cheaper option.
Right.
It's covered, but you don't have to be inside. You don't have all the AV stuff, you don't have all the cleaning.
Well, and if you don't want access to the bathrooms,
Yeah.
you're
can
just gonna
use
have
it.
a birthday party out there and don't want access to the bathrooms, then you just go chance it and have your birthday party out
Yeah.
there. First come, first serve.
There's some places in town, people that have bathrooms that are accessible. And, you know, locals know that. So,
I think any birthday, I'm just thinking any birthday party that's been out there, or, you know, when we used to have Memorial Day potluck or something out there, we didn't necessarily think that we were gonna have access to the bathroom, and I don't even know
But
that
it would be
anyone even
nice.
tried.
But it's, they're open more now, so.
So what's a fair rate for bathroom only? It sounds like pavilion only would be $29 or $30 to cover the trash removal and Malia's time. But what would be your bathroom only coverage for
it's been 25,
25?
and we don't use it for everybody.
I don't think we should have a bathroom only, because if it's an event that's big enough to have need of the bathrooms, they're gonna generate trash that's gonna go in the
Yeah.
dumpster. So I think that we just
So
have,
like
Pavilion.
mainly
pavilion,
marathon, mainly
yeah.
marathons
Well,
would be
it's-
pavilion and bathroom.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
renting the outdoor space plus, got it.
And that's where I suggested $50. You don't break it out to bathrooms and pavilion, you rent the pavilion and we open the bathrooms. And that's $50. $60,
I
you
think
wanna
it's
call it
60
60?
to cover Malia's time too.
Yeah.
Probably be a little bit more.
60, I'd say 60's reasonable.
Okay. And then pavilion only, we'll just call it 30, because that covers trash and.
No, because there wouldn't be, well,
Wait, did you want the option that they could rent the pavilion without renting the bathrooms, so she doesn't have to come open everything
I say
up?
that's first come, first serve.
No
Yeah.
matter what, okay.
Yeah, if you want to reserve the pavilion and open the bathrooms, then it costs you. If you want to just show up and see who's here and not use any bathrooms, then that's just first come, first serve. But if
So-
you have a bunch of people out there, you don't want them to not have access to water and bathrooms.
So in the garage sale situation, for a full day, if I wanted to have a garage sale, I could load up my truck and come over here and set it up for a full day and not be charged because I didn't reserve it
Mhm.
and I didn't use the bathroom.
Mhm.
Boy, I disagree with that. I think we at least have to do the trash. Are you saying not charge for the trash? Because I think a full day rental for something like an event generates trash.
No, I agree, but that's the rental, right? Well, but I see what you're saying too, that, oh, I'm gonna go to the community center and
But they're
take my
not-
chance.
Yeah, if first come, first serve, then that means we're not regulating number of hours they can be there, what they're setting up or anything. I think if it's maybe say an advertised event, if you're advertising it as an event, and it's a full day,
Well,
you're gonna pay for the trash.
That's the way you could define it. Otherwise, it's like, who signs up to pay? Because they show up and wait to see if somebody comes to collect.
So
if
we
you're-
just say it's an advertised event.
Yeah, that might do it.
But
And then just the trash?
No,
I'd say, like-
if it's an advertised event, they get access to the bathrooms and,
it's
Yeah,
$60.
because see, you bringing
Got it.
people up, yeah, that's the other side of it, is if you're advertising your whatever and you're bringing the public up here, it seems like you need to open the bathrooms,
Yeah. So,
which would go back to the $60
right.
to
So-
reserve it and take the trash and use the bathroom.
Okay, so we'll write up a policy for that, for the pavilion. Okay, so the really big piece, I think, is Fire Mesa Kitchen. So thank you to everyone that has written or commented on how we can make the best use of Fire Mesa Kitchen for the community. And so I think in the packet that got sent out, I sent what I believe is the last round of information from Malia Collins and the coffee shop. And then we have our standard contract that we've been using that does not anticipate hourly use or subscriptions or memberships. So I tried to put in the options that I've heard about or that I think we've talked about, but we need to figure out what we're doing and how we're going to execute on it. And so before we start talking about the actual rental piece, I had some additional considerations. I think we need a Fire Mesa Kitchen lockbox for the key. I think we need to, if we're going to do any kind of multi-rental, kind of in the same day or the same timeframes, that if you're the current renter, that's great. If you're not the current renter, you can't come in and out. These are just suggestions. We don't have a credit card system, so we're going to have to, at least at this point, stick with cash, check, and money orders. And the two things that we've had in place since we incorporated were that well-behaved dogs are allowed in the community center, and the alcohol. There's no alcohol unless you've got local consent. Those are things we need to consider kind of as broad policies, but then on the Fire Mesa Kitchen. So what do folks want to do? I know this has been controversial.
So what we have in our packet is the original and the membership part.
The original, meaning what we're working under now?
Yeah.
No. Are we? No, I don't think any of it is what we're working under now. Like, this is all information that has come in separately.
I sent out the document you sent, so it's a pretty lengthy document, 13 pages,
Yeah.
13-page PDF land.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not include what our current contract looks like.
Okay.
I would assume that everybody could, and which is a bad assumption on my part, but I just assume people know that what we have right now is it's a half, and I think I did put that in here, that right now, what we have is $60 for 5 hours or less, $100 for a full day, and cleaning is $40. That's what we have currently. So,
And for a full day, it was
100,
to rent fire kitchen for a full day.
right.
And still the same cleaning fee.
So, say that again?
The same cleaning fee, $40.
Yes, that's what we currently
That's
have
what we're
as a
working
rental
under right now.
policy.
Okay.
So what we have never had during our incorporation is occasional use of hourly. So that's what we're being asked to expand, to allow occasional or regular use based on hourly amounts.
If we do hourly, and most of the letters asked for hourly, would we keep what we are currently doing too, so that people can do it instead of hourly, half-day or full day?
And that's what we have to decide. And I think that in the information that I attached was pretty much the work products that came out of Malia meeting with the coffee shop. And like, there are some things that to me are like absolutely no-brainers. This is great to have the checklist about the cleaning, regardless of whether we're charging for cleaning. Kind of some, some of the basic things that they've narrowed down, I like that. But the biggest decision that I feel like we need to talk about is it we stick with the current method of you rent it half a day or a full day, and there's no other option, or half a day, full day, or hourly. And then if it's hourly, do we do subscriptions or a co-op idea, or do we go strictly to hourly? I mean, I think those are unless somebody sees a fourth option, those seem to me to be the three ways that we break it down.
It seems to me the subscription and membership thing is like something a co-op would do, and a co-op is where there's a whole lot more people. So I'm not really crazy about that idea. They had $7 hourly a lot, which I think, we could try that. 7's a possibility. So, now I've lost my train of thought. But, well, anyway, I'm sure it'll come back.
So if we're charging a half-day rental fee for the Fire Mesa kitchen, currently that fee is
That's the 60.
$60 a day.
Mhm.
If you break that down to an hourly rate, that's $12 an hour for 5 hours, right?
Right.
So why would someone rent for a half-day if they can get $7 an hour for an hourly rate?
But that's with the membership. So what I think is we don't need the hourly for just, I want to use it for an hour. I think that you have to be a membership in order to use the hourly rate. So I'd say stick with the half-day and the full day and the membership. And then the membership pays hourly. I think that we should try it and see how it goes. I like the idea of them being able, as a member, to be able to go into the calendar and put in the date that they want it, and they use it, and they clean it. I think that we ought to try it for a year and see how it goes. Because it's sitting there, it's useful. If somebody has a breakdown, they can sign up as a member and use it for a week or two and be a member and maybe not use it the rest of the year. But I think there needs to be a membership fee which I'm not seeing on here. I'd suggested, 100 or 150 or something to make the commitment and to give basically that makes it a deposit from the members' side of things, that they're a responsible party in this membership use of the kitchen.
So one thing that you said reminded me of something. I think if we do it hourly, there needs to be a minimum, because it's a whole lot of work for those of us that are involved, for someone to use it for an hour. I mean, my idea would be 2 or 3 hours. And I think one thing people aren't aware of is if Malia spends an hour scheduling it, if I spend pretty much an hour dealing with the paperwork, which includes a lot of steps, and it's cleaned by Pat, we're up to $70. And
Right.
so and I'm not saying we have to, cover that 70, but I know people keep saying, oh, it's empty, no one's using it. I mean, it's available for use. Maybe right now it isn't, but it's available for use, and there is a big cost. Then we have utilities, pest control, insurance, and all those other things. So even though people see it as empty, using it has a lot of costs. It takes a lot of my time to have to deal with a check, deal with a deposit, file, and do the accounting part of it. It's not doesn't happen magically.
Right, so I think we agree on that. It's half day or full day, or you have to be a member to be the hourly. Because, yeah, for somebody just to come in off the street and use it for an hour isn't, you need to have it $50 an hour or something then to make that make sense. So I would not do that either. But I would do the membership and let them do an hourly, and Malia doesn't need to schedule any of that because they can schedule it on the calendar. And they would have the lockbox key, the code to the lockbox. They let themselves in, they clean it up after. And I don't see that adds any work to anybody.
I mean, they do have to be checked after every cleaning. Like, it can't be up to the people renting. It's gonna have to be a third party saying,
Well-
oh, it's clean. Because then if you have 2 members renting it, then one person comes in and says, oh, it wasn't cleaned, then.
Well,
You
that's
see what I'm saying?
part of being the membership. That's where the members sort of police each other. And I mean, like whoever's checking the whole place needs to make sure lights are off and whatever, but you swing by and
Yeah, I don't like the idea of users policing each other, I guess is what I'm saying.
well, but they're all, like, on our staff, do we have food handlers cleaning? Like, are they all food handler certified, whoever cleans,
So like our current cleaners,
our staff?
no, they're not.
But they're not handling
The
food.
food.
No, but they're cleaning it to that standard. So the food handlers are cleaning to food handler standards, so.
Supposedly, just having a license, it doesn't mean that you're actually doing it.
Right, and just being a
So-
cleaner doesn't mean you do it either, but I think it's
But
worth a
having
try
us
to
as a
let them,
standard-
do it for a
having
year
us as a
and,
standard on what clean is, does do that. You don't have to have a license for us to know what our standard of clean is.
I think a year is way too long to commit ourselves to something that may work, may not work, probably needs to be tweaked. I would go a month at a time. Last time Ann said 3, which might be more realistic, but we have to have Malia doing this. And you have to, because if she's not, and there's questions, they're asking me and Ann and Erin, and we don't know because we're busy doing the things that we're doing. So it's really important to me that Malia, who, worked hard to figure this stuff out, is,
is she not willing to do this?
oh no, there's no,
So let's be realistic about what our ability is. Malia has a full-time job. The people who clean and do maintenance have other full-time jobs. It's not whether people are willing, it's whether they're able to. And both Linda and I, and I'm assuming Erin as well, we've been called on fairly regularly to open the building, close the building, do whatever. I'm fine with that. I haven't heard. I know Linda said she's fine with it. But the reality is Malia or anyone else that we hire to do it is not going to be 24/7 available. So if we have a rental that comes in and says, I want 3 hours in the morning, and somebody else says, I want 4 in the afternoon, 2 different groups. Self-policing has been something that's really difficult, number one. And number two, what do we do if the second group comes in and it isn't clean to standard and we have a health inspector visit that pops in? What's the penalty to us if we have a health inspector pop in and says, this isn't clean? And at least we know our current cleaner knows how to clean it to standard. I mean, we've never had an issue with the current person cleaning. I'm fine with giving this a shot and seeing how we do with the hourly.
So this is April, so if we did it 6 months, it'd get us through this season. Because it's also people, you know, if they want to use it, it'd get through the season and then could see what problems came up.
If it becomes, parts of it become a headache, I don't want to wait 6 months to make changes. I mean, you know, we might see things that need to be changed, they might see things that need to be changed. I mean, a 3-month trial run to me is long, but I'm willing to look at it. Because it affects me in
Well,
part.
then maybe that's, do you want to delegate the fire kitchen to me? And I will check with Malia if there's a problem. I can help open it when she's not here and whatnot. Because that's where the key box is too. The members would do it that way. If the members have used it in between a rental, I think is what you're fearful of, that they wouldn't. So if there was a problem, I know how to clean. Could do that if
Well,
that
we
would
could-
take a burden off of you guys, because I think it should be used.
I don't think anyone's disagreeing with that, Lou.
Yeah, so let me do that part.
What's the problem with 3 months? Why is that not?
I think
No,
3
she
months
wants you
gives us
guys.
a data set, and we're not saying at the end of 3 months, if it's, you know, if it's.
Just do a review.
review,
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying, let's say we're not going to say, okay, we're not gonna look at this again for another 6 months. If we say we're gonna check this out 3 months, is this working? Great. Do we need to tweak something? Great. And then extend it from there.
And the reality is there's nothing that prevents us if this takes off and it's really working and we've got, everything's going smoothly, just saying, we're not doing a review, we're fine.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
If there's a major catastrophe that we have to address, we'll do it. So, to me, I think just, like, do a 3-month review. If, Lou, you're willing to do the check-in after each use and make sure that, you know.
After the members, because the other part's already set
Right,
up.
right. Yeah, I'm just talking about the
No,
members.
No, if
And not-
somebody needs something.
And for those people listening, we're not saying that there's a problem with the current people using it. It's that, if the idea is it's a community-based use, and there are people coming in that are more than just the coffee shop, then there's going to be overlapping times and use, and needs to be clean.
But they would be members signed up. They're the only ones that would be allowed to do that,
Right.
would be a membership thing.
Right.
So like I say, there needs to be a membership fee
I'm
to
not disagreeing.
prevent that from being, well, I'm gonna be a member today, and then along on down the road they go. So
No.
they need to be members.
Right,
with
so-
more of a deposit than if they just rented it for
Right.
5 hours.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the membership. So what would we set for a membership fee, and how would we do it based on 3 months? Are we just talking about a 3-month membership right now? Or do we think about, what if we did this annually? What would we charge? And then we just charge 1/4 for the 3 months. Okay, so what would an annual fee look like?
It seems to me like if you're gonna be a member, it needs to be at least 100, probably, you don't wanna be overwhelming fee, but with a easy hourly rate. I don't know, I was hoping that that would have been something that would have come back with the idea. But
Well, they did in-
150 maybe, is in between. So what would that be quarterly? Or 150?
The recommendation we got from Malia and the shop, the coffee shop, the member purchases a membership package at the beginning of each month. It gives them a set number of rentable hours, up to 20 hours purchased for 140 at the start of the month. And that busts
Yeah,
out
see, I
set.
think you just need to be a member with your information given, this is who's responsible for it, this is the amount of money they've put in, and have all that information. If you just buy a few units, then you don't really have that commitment to being a member. If you just say, well, I want to use it for 10 hours and go on my way, I think you need to have a membership fee.
If you charged $40 a quarter for a membership fee, that would be $160 for a year. If you broke it in, 160 divided by 4 is $60 or $40. Just do that.
And
right?
so, yeah, that would work.
40 times 4 is 160.
Yes.
So that would be $160 a year. So if we charged it by a quarter, that's a 3-month period for now. So for the trial run, we could say you can become a member for 3 months. And then if it extends after that, then you just charge out the remaining quarters.
And I would say to charge the 160 up front, because we don't want members that are gonna stick around for 2 months. And then if this doesn't work, we give a refund. But to sign up, you're on a year schedule, a year commitment, that prevents
see,
the
that's-
bookkeeping with Linda's.
But when we're only doing it for a trial period, I don't want to say, I'm
Well,
going to
you'd
make you.
refund it.
But that refunding is kind of a hassle. It really is. I don't charge deposits for my hotel anymore because I got burnt by it because I had COVID hit and I had $12,000 worth of refunds that I immediately had to issue. So refunds are a hassle. So I would rather say we're going to give this membership a run. We're going to do it for 3 months, pay your $30. Now, if this doesn't work after that, then we don't have to, go run around the res looking for every person or go to the coffee shop or whatever to refund your money. If it works after 3 months and you want to continue to be a member, then you can pay the rest of the year's dues, and then starting January 1st, it's $160 to be a membership.
And then is there an hourly rate for the
Yeah,
membership?
then it's
Yes.
still, that looks fine, that's $7 or whatever. it is.
My question with the hourly rate is how are we going to accurately track those hours? Are we going to get a time clock that everybody has a time card and they punch in and out, and that's the honor system that you forget to clock out? Are you going to be charged?
Well, they're self-policing, and if it is kind of a little bit like a co-op, then other people in the co-op should be addressing that.
But is a time card an unrealistic thing to, I mean, you can get a time clock from Sam's Club for $40. I mean, and they're not cost prohibitive. You just have a card that you clock in, you clock out. Every employee on the planet used to do it on a regular basis.
Does
It's a-
that mean they're gonna do it? I mean, if
Well, right.
someone's there for 2 hours and they're doing whatever, and maybe they forget, or maybe they just say, oh, I'm just not gonna do it this time. So, I mean, it is a possibility for the future.
Well, or the other thing they'd need to do then is on the calendar, just put that they were there 1 to 3, or, go back in on the calendar and put the hours that was the actual, or they'd reserve it for that much time. I mean, that's part of this 3-month trial thing, is to see if you can
Well-
get it entered in.
What if, for the 3 months, I'm looking at the membership rates, they pick their membership rate for the 3 months, like up to 10 hours a month, up to 40 hours a month. They pay. We do it on the honor system about keeping track, and we see if it's working. And if it isn't working, we'll know it because some of us are here a lot, and we see people who come and go in this building and parking lot, and then Fire Mesa Kitchen.
So this payment would be, I'm gonna pay my membership rate, and then I'm going to say, I'm going to use up to 10 hours a month. So right now up front, I'm gonna pay my membership fee of $40 and $70 for the month rental.
Yep. And then next month, if you decide you want 60 hours, then you pay more.
But how, maybe that's easier bookkeeping wise, but that seems a little cumbersome to me. It seems like you would just, as a member, you would not necessarily have it scheduled exactly when you were gonna use it for exact number of hours, and you would just go on the calendar and say, hey, can you go bake all these things, or can you, let's go make a bunch of tamales or whatever, and then you would just book it on the calendar and say, and then you'd have 5 hours that day, and then maybe an hour another day. That, to me, is kind of the beauty of the membership thing, is you can just put it on the calendar, and then on the calendar, put it in at the end of the month, charge everybody what they owe.
Okay, we're not gonna do in my opinion, charging at the end of the month is gonna be a nightmare, because then you've gotta try to collect. We're gonna have to figure out collecting for a month, and then moving forward, collecting for a
Well,
month.
then the box changes and you're no longer a member and you just lost your membership. That's the beauty of the membership thing, is you wanna be a member or you don't. If you don't wanna be a member, then you do you come and have somebody open the door for you and babysit you along the way. If you're a member, you do that yourself. We've changed the code and they're not in anymore. They just they total up their own hours and send a check or whatever.
Under the membership application contract, it all says $7 an hour.
Mhm.
I mean, it doesn't
So you just total your hours that you were in there, you'd stick it on the calendar, I was in there 6 today, and tomorrow
Yeah.
I'm in 2, and they just total it up and send the check for the month. But they've paid their membership fee, and then they send in how many hours they did, and you just collect the check.
yeah. And so if it's $7 an hour, maybe I missed something, but if you use it this many hours, it costs this many hours. If it's just always 7,
I think, Linda, I think that, because I was thinking the same thing too, that there was a different rate for a number of hours, but I see this as being a package that you prepay. If you think you're going to use it up to 60 hours, then you pay $420 upfront. I think, am I?
No.
But
No,
that's
that's-
why I think just letting them decide how many hours they actually used it, and just send a check instead of having to monitor, well, did you use 10 or did you use 12 or did you use 20 or
Right,
30? Then
right.
we don't have to watch, they just put it on the calendar and pay at the end of the month after they've paid their membership. The membership fee comes first.
Now, there's another problem with several people using it. So someone sends employees over to do to work, to make something, or hires different people at different times, it has to be simple enough that those people also put down their time and accurately and can follow.
And that's up to the member. That's where, and you just boot the member out. If they're not recording time, or they're not cleaning it, or they leave it unlocked, or whatever, then they're not a sustainable member.
Okay, so let me see if I can say this correctly. It sounds like there is no opposition to keeping the half-day and the full day and the cleaning fee for the occasional renter. That we're, at least have a consensus or an agreement that we can do a membership, try out a membership and hourly. we don't necessarily agree on the cleaning process, but Luanne is willing to help with keeping the cleaning process appropriate for whatever the criteria is, and to help with the opening of the buildings when we have to, but that shouldn't be a problem if we have the lockbox. So where we're kind of stuck is like, how do we, so does everybody like Jen's idea of roughly $40 a quarter for 3 months for the membership fee on a temporary basis?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay, so then it's the
That's-
hourly.
So let's see, I'm wondering, though, like if you, see, the problem with that is that if I look at it and I say, well, I can rent it for $60 for a half a day, or I can become a member and pay $40.
I'm
40
lost.
plus your hourly.
Plus your hourly, you know. So we just.
So if you had somebody who only wanted, okay, I have to pay $40 for a 3-month rental up front, and then my hourly behind that, are we gonna get people who are just coming in and paying $40 and using it rather than doing a half-day rental?
And coming back as a member and stuff, but
But
I
they're-
don't think, I think
they're-
that for these 3 months, I don't think it'll be a problem. So
But they're
you
gonna
can-
pay, if you're talking about using,
I don't think it's gonna be an issue either.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and they're
don't
gonna
think
have a-
We
it'll,
should
but
just
they're-
take that off the table.
Yeah.
using that theory, they're gonna have a $40 cleaning fee each time they do that. If they're renting it for half a day, they're gonna get a
Right,
cleaning fee.
right.
Right.
So it really, yeah, and I think we're getting too far in the weeds, because if we're gonna do it as a trial,
Yeah,
let's just do
and
it.
that's why I think the membership fee needs to be the $160 upfront as soon as we get through this trial thing.
Well, right,
Yeah.
right, but I'm thinking for the 3 months,
Yeah,
it would be.
it'll be fine.
Yes. Then the rest of it would be due for the next 9 months. All right, so can we all live with the $7 an hour?
If that's what was proposed from everybody's, look, I think it's fine.
It doesn't matter what everybody else proposes, it's what does the council want to vote on next week? Does anybody want to go higher or lower than the 7 an hour?
I would say for the 3 months, let's try it at $7 an hour.
Perfect.
If it doesn't work and it's not paying the bills, then we need to reevaluate and raise rates or something like that.
Okay,
But I would say we have to start somewhere for a trial period.
yep,
It's not gonna make or break us in 3 months if it's too low, hopefully. And if it does, then we,
A lot of cooking going on.
okay.
And then maybe for this, after the trial, we do a minimum, we may need to do a minimum, because having people use it just for an hour, use it.
No, it wouldn't be.
It's a ton of work.
Yep, let's see how it works then, and we'll just
Yeah.
revisit it. If there's a real problem on either side, the renter or us, we can come back. So,
Yeah, because like if somebody paid a membership fee and did it for, so you're thinking you pay the membership fee, but then it's just an hour, I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. I don't think it'll be a problem.
okay. And,
I mean, I would like to see if we're doing this even for 3 months, that it be pushed to, like, I don't know, flyers and stuff around to let other people know that it's happening, because right now, I don't see if you're across the river, how you would even know about this.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So, for us to get data on it, we need more than just the one group using it, So I'd push for that during that time as well.
I think that's a good point. If the idea that we're changing how we use it is to be more community-based, then pushing it out is going to have to be a part of the plan.
And it's probably on the website for the.
There are some things on the website, and we can leave that one to Malia to figure.
Bulletin
Yeah.
boards at the laundromats,
Mhm.
stuff where people across the river would see it.
A good one would be a flyer put in the food distribution on the first Friday of the month
Yeah.
with
Something like
Jenny's
that.
newsletter. Okay, so now cold storage, dry storage, frozen storage. I'm just going to say, if we're going to do the idea of community use, storing, at least in the freezer and the refrigerator, is not an option.
I agree.
It just isn't.
Because
No.
if you're renting this out, maybe some dry storage is okay, but if you're renting out a package of, you have access to the refrigerator and the freezer and whatever, I'm gonna go have my wedding here, I'm renting this because I want to be able to use the refrigerator too. If I open up that refrigerator and it's 3/4 filled with somebody else's stuff, that doesn't work.
Yeah, it would have to be something like in the container or some other place that you had somewhere to rent storage to. It can't be in there, I don't think.
So if we have a consensus that frozen and refrigerated is going to have to be removed after your use is done, dry, should we start with trying it with the dry with bins where they're a designated area or no storage?
Well, if we have a cabinet that's not being utilized for something else, then maybe that's a possibility.
But then you have to have a key to it to see if,
Yeah.
you know, if it's clean, if it's, I'd say you clean it out. It's cleaned out once you get done. And that's what coolers are for and totes are for, and you take the
Okay.
rest with you.
And as a public entity, we have to treat everybody the same.
Yeah.
And we can't necessarily, if we give one entity dry storage, you know, we could put a lock on something, then if someone else asks for it, we have to do the same.
Right, right.
And if it's a big demand, then we could build some storage units or something that would be outside or something, but to keep it.
We already have a storage unit.
Well, that's why I say, if you want to rent it out.
I mean,
But that's a temporary unit anyway, so, I mean, I don't know. I would just not store stuff for people.
all right, then I'm going to say that for the purposes of bringing this back and kind of tidying up everything we've talked about for next week to be able to look at and vote, I'm going to be gone this weekend and I don't intend to be doing a lot of work, so I'll try to work with getting this kind of done. Maybe a lot of the work's already been done, and maybe I can get some input from the people that drafted the initial stuff to be able to clean up and get it into a contract, or maybe Malia has time. I don't know what her schedule looks like. I can talk to her too. Anything further on?
So at this point, would we try for, say, a May 1st start?
And just,
For whatever we end up going with, to give them time to remove stuff and,
that's a good suggestion, May 1. So it'll be May, June, July, through July for the trial run.
And for the 3-month trial run, just so we can, I'm trying to think of if I was going to do a motion, I would I'm not doing a motion.
Thank you, Brant.
It would be like I motion that we trial for a 3-month period, $40 membership fee, $7 an hour, payable on the 30th day of each month.
so this is before they do it or after?
The
Should be prior.
the
And it'd be it's a quarterly,
membership fee,
Okay.
fee would be
That would be
payable
prior, okay.
prior, but the usage fee is going to be due on,
the first of the next month, maybe.
and then,
So you're doing actual usage versus projected, so it's actual usage.
right.
A lot less paperwork and a lot less policing and a lot less all of that.
And then they have to sign the contract that says that they agree to XXXXX. So we would need to have the contract concrete, and then those are our trial month things.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I would prefer they pay twice a month. I mean, well,
That's that much more
not the,
paperwork.
the membership, but that's just me. I mean,
That's-
maybe,
that
well,
just-
we're trying it. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
Yeah,
That's
let's try it on the
fine.
month and
To
see what
trial.
it says, because it might not include, but that is, that is another trip to the bank. It is,
Yeah.
if we can get it down to once a month, then,
Yeah, and it's once a month for them too, to have to total their hours and stuff. I think once a month is plenty for the amount of money. It's not like thousands and thousands, it's just
Okay.
a little bit of income that they're trading out.
All right. Then,
So do we have a contract?
yeah, the Malia and the coffee shop worked on all those forms, and it's a matter of revising them to fit the temporary.
You know, this contract, I'm trying to look for it, but it had something about, that's not, doesn't seem enforceable, that had to do with the people doing that could not do any kind of cooking outside of the kitchen. I mean, let's say you're making bread, and you start the bread at home, because it's an 18-hour process, and you want to bake it here. There's a piece that talks about enforcing that people do not do anything at home. Well, and the other part that goes with that is, so you've got one group that do it by the half day or full day that can bring in food that's already made, but then you've got another group that can't. I mean, that to me is pretty confusing.
I wonder if that was, I think I'm seeing it. Rentals shall produce, maintain the appropriate, no, that's not it.
Yeah, wherever that is, I
Unless-
agree with that, Linda, that seems,
But where that comes into play, and I can see why they put that in there, is because that's a food handler specification, because if you're saying that you're producing this in a food certified, or in a food handler type situation, and you're bringing in your dough that's made in your house, which,
Yeah.
you know, who knows what conditions your house is in,
Not good.
you know, I mean.
but that's up to the people that are,
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it
because
went as
like
far.
you can.
But I agree with you at the same point, Linda, that if my oven's broken and I'm gonna become a member to come bake bread at Fire Mesa Kitchen,
Yeah,
I don't wanna come down here yesterday to,
yeah.
you know, I'm gonna bring my tote of dough and come bake the bread. I'm not gonna come down here, mix my bread, leave my bread dough here, da-da-da-da-da. I don't know, that's a.
There's one other minor thing that I've talked to Malia about. She's talked about putting a shelf over the sinks, and I don't know how strong the tamped earth is. I don't know that it was made to put lots of dishes and pots and pans on.
Well, right now, unless my recollection is wrong, there's still a fair amount of cupboard space in there. And I think that's a question for the future, whether we need
Okay.
another shelf or not. And I agree, that I don't know that I'm in a position to say what the walls are like. I don't think anybody here is, so. Okay, I'm gonna give it a shot to clean it up with hopefully Malia and everybody else's help. Let's see if we can get through these next few. If we're done with this, is everybody okay with? Hopefully we can wrap it up at the next meeting. The number 3 is a discussion of amendments to the current fee schedule. This is more of a reminder that if we're going to be changing, even temporarily, we're going to have to change our fee schedule. So even on a temporary basis, I'm going to have to pull out the fee schedule and make the adjustments, and probably get that on for next week. For changing, and Erin, you might have had a couple others that you noted with possibilities.
Yeah, it's interesting because I went and looked at the one that planning and zoning noted regarding a land partition. It is listed as number 10. Yeah, we just, we're one up. So I'll look and see if there's anything else that I think is missing, if we're gonna make a change.
Good. Excuse me. All right, then on number 4. So This is discussion of solar panels for the Cooperative Cultural Center and the possibility of purchasing panels from AES. You probably all saw in the San Juan Record or heard in the news that AES donated a couple of years ago solar panels to the city of Monticello. The then city council had voted to use those panels to increase their solar production, or to get solar production to the outdoor pool. And about 2.5 or 3 months ago, the city of Monticello rescinded that vote and decided that they were giving the panels back. The panels are currently being stored in Monticello. There's also an inverter. There was a pretty complicated contract that went with it with already chosen installer, and then training some students how to do solar installation. It is possible that the town could make an offer to purchase those solar panels. Like, there's roughly 160 of them. AES is not in a position to be able to donate those solar panels at this point, but it may be possible to make an offer. It is possible to make an offer to AES. I have not spoken to AES directly about this, but I am putting it out there for consideration when we are setting a time to talk about the capital improvement projects, which we have to do before we finalize the budget for 2025. And Erin can give a little update on what the current grant looks like for being able to do solar. But basically, it's in our environmental justice to justice plan, right?
Yeah,
To
we've
be
got
solar ready.
$63,000 for solar ready. It doesn't spell out any purchasing of panels, though.
Right.
I know there are a lot of programs to purchase panels, reimbursement.
So according to Drew Cooper, who is really familiar with the infrastructure plan, if you purchase the solar panels, then, I forget what the phrase is, but you can submit that receipt to the IRS and they will reimburse you. It's either 50 or 60. Drew says 60, I'm going with 60%. It might be 50. Somebody else who has been involved in it said 50%. Whatever it is, the town would get reimbursed. And it's like doing your child care credit. It's not a complex formula or a bunch of stuff you have to do. It's basically a form, you submit it. But I think we need to consider it, because this might be an opportunity to do a capital improvement project of purchasing those panels, hopefully at a reasonable rate, because they're 2 years old, 2+ years old. Our issue would be, if we wanted to consider doing it, is like storage, because if we're gonna do on top of the roof, that might be really a breeze, and it'll be less expensive. But if we have to do on ground, then we've got a lot more work to do, and our partner, Utah Deneba may not be totally on board with being on ground. I've run it by Janet in particular about solar. As we know, UDB is also interested in solar. It's kind of the placement and not having it be taking up the entire yard. So I'm just throwing that out there for the next piece, which is a discussion of capital improvement projects. I'd like to set a date to be able to just do a 1 or 2 hour session just on capital improvement projects. And we've got to get that list together. We're talking to the CIB Thursday. And so we have some work to do to get everything on a list. So on the solar panels, does anybody have a thought on that, or should I just continue to investigate what might be out there, and then we talk about it on the capital improvements work session?
Man, I'd like to see what the reasonable rate would be like for handling this, when we're not necessarily choosing everything that we want. We're picking up something we didn't plan for. I would hope that is severely cheaper, and if it is, then
And
there. But
also, what kinds of I mean, did Monticello just decide not to use it because they couldn't figure it out? Or were there some kind of crazy, you have to use us to install and da-da-da-da, and it turns into another type of thing where it's just not reasonable? They don't come and do what they're gonna say they're gonna do when they're gonna do it. Is it just gonna become a nightmare?
Monticello's objection was raised by one council member, and that council member, according to the San Juan record and the people involved with AES, is that this one person was able to sway the entire, get enough votes to say we're giving it back. It had nothing to do with the donation by AES. It was simply put by one person. I don't think we should do it, and these are my reasons why. And so what I would envision is we make an offer to buy them, and we figure out the installing, and we figure out whether we wanted to have students who would have to be over the age of any 12th grade funding, because we could, I think we would lay out what our offer is so that we wouldn't have stipulations.
I still see a good use for them for covered parking. They'd be easy to install. You'd have to build the structure for the parking, but you could have covered parking along the west side and the north side of the old school with all those panels right on top, and they just go right on. And also the people put them up high enough that you can put little trees under them. We could do the gardening under them.
Well, and that's why we need to have a bigger discussion in the capital improvement project, because if this is something we want to do, we
Is
need
there-
to have a list and kind of put it together.
What about this building? It's metal, so it doesn't need to be torn off if, to get repaired. And we use them up here?
Well, that's kind of the point. Do we have a use for the solar panels that Monticello gave back? And do we want to make an offer, or do we not?
I think it's important to understand how much bang for our buck we can get. Like, what are the actual specifications of these specific panels? Like, is 160 way overkill for this building or the CCC?
Yeah, how big are they?
Yeah, or is it, like, are we still gonna have to purchase additional ones on top of that? Are they gonna be compatible? And I don't know enough about solar to speak to this knowledgeably, but I think that's the question, is who can advise us as to whether these will fit our needs, or are we like way on either end of having way too many or way too few?
And I see it as a really basic thing. Do we want to explore solar at this point or not? And I don't want to spend a whole lot of my energy talking to these folks on the side, conversation, if I don't have a consensus that we should explore solar, which is why it's only on here as a talking point. Like, I have an opportunity to work on this. Do you want me to work on this? And
I
should it
think
go on a capital improvement project for discussion or not? We don't have to decide what building, whether it's ground or roof or anything at this point. It's just, should I waste my time now or not?
I think it was in the strategic plan and the general plan that Bluff wants to see more solar energy produced, and the building's paid for with solar, but we don't have enough wind, so solar's the option.
If it makes sense. I agree with what Erin said. I think we need to do an initial evaluation. For example, I got what I thought was a great deal on bamboo flooring on Facebook Marketplace. I got X amount of, I got 30 boxes of this bamboo flooring, da-da-da-da. I get it home. It's not enough. Now it's gonna cost me twice as much money to match the bamboo flooring that I have, that I would have, blah, 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 blah. So if there's enough to cover a project that we needed and it's a reasonable thing, then yes, I say we explore it. If it's a non-compatible system or something because now it's 2 years old and it's gonna cost us a lot of money to bring it to be compatible, then it doesn't make sense maybe necessarily.
Yeah, I think, we explore what we want, and then if that happens to work, great. Is there a time clock? Are they like, we've had them for 2 years and we're gonna throw them on the side of the road tomorrow if somebody doesn't come get them? Like, is there
There probably is a little bit, because they want to get, I would imagine they're taking up a bunch of space. And then the next question is, do we have the space to store 160 solar panels in a
I
process
know, well, that's why
that's-
if it was something that could go on this building and pay the expenses up here, we could just get the installer and bring them down and put them up there.
Or if we have an empty storage container, is it,
See, I bet they wouldn't go in there.
So I've been reading IRS stuff because I have a heat pump, and there are, for people that are doing solar panels, heat pumps, those kind of things, it's a tax credit. I want to be sure that for municipalities, is it a tax credit, which we can't use, or is it a kind of a rebate?
Exactly, that's,
According to Drew Cooper and the other source, it is a rebate. You get, you get a check.
from who?
The IRS, that's who you
But we
submit
don't
it
pay
to.
taxes. So if you feel
Okay,
strongly enough that it's a.
I'm timing this one. We're gonna get through these agenda items by noon today. This will go on the capital improvement project list. Make a list of all your questions, because if I'm going to spend time working on this, I want to make sure that I have covered all the questions of the capital improvement project before I wait, spend any more time talking to people. I think that's fair to me at this
And
point.
Monticello should know if they were gonna buy them, they should know if they were gonna get the rebate.
But they didn't buy them, they were donated to Monticello.
Well, see, that's what I thought, so, but now they're selling them.
No, they,
No,
they gave them
AES is-
back to AES. They gave them back.
But AES doesn't wanna donate them to Bluff. Well, anyway, but that's.
I
my-
think, I'm going to answer the question. At this point in time, due to litigation, any third party probably does not want to be involved in our politics, and they're going to stay away from donating or doing anything for us. I think that's a fair statement, and I think it's an accurate reflection of what being in litigation is about. So no, they will not be donating them.
But we could make an offer. Yeah, I'd go for it. Yeah, I'd see what it is.
And
but
again, I appreciate AES even being open
Yeah.
to this. So let's talk about it, but I want to move to the capital improvement project number 5, because we need to do a number of, it actually kind of ties to number 6. Luanne, every year has raised the issue of cutting back the number of meetings and doing a work session in place. And I think for the purpose of right now where we are, with the number of meetings we have to sort things out, we should try it. And so starting with May, what I'm proposing is we have our first Tuesday be a meeting, our second Tuesday be a work session, our third meeting be a meeting, and everybody hold the fourth Tuesday as much as you can open if we have to get something on to vote or do something. But this will require, I don't know, this will require a resolution for us to pass to make that change. And if there's an interest in doing that,
And would you keep the timing the same at 4 PM?
yeah, for consistency, I think. I
Because
think
that was a question from the AV, from Craig,
Yeah.
wonderful Craig, because
Yeah.
he is trying to leave Tuesday afternoons open
Yeah,
for us.
I think in the Open and Public Meetings Act, because of the way things are worded about where we meet and how we meet, to make this change, we probably should just be changing what our focus is, work session versus a town council meeting.
So then you needed one on the 30th of April, you figured, or is that just a
Well, I'd
hold
like to
open?
do a work session on the 30th of April, because we have a number of things that we have to talk about, including the capital improvement project, to be able to put that into play for the 2025 budget. And so if people could do a work session on the 30th and then these other dates, do a resolution, kind of carry it forward through probably, I'd recommend we try it through June or July, just because the budget, we're going to need work sessions for the budget. And I'm kind of, I mean, I'm actually really torn because I feel like we have so much to do, but I also realize that we're going to burn ourselves out if we don't make a switch here for the next couple of months at least.
And I think we get a lot done in the work sessions, and I think it takes a lot of work to prepare the agendas and get the meetings all coordinated and stuff, so I think that it will balance that out some too, so that we don't have all that to prepare for the regular meeting.
To prepare for this work session, I spent 13 hours.
Right,
Yeah.
so every meeting, yeah,
And so,
because there's so much.
right now, we've got a lot going on, and we're just pushing the Fire Mesa Kitchen piece out 3 months. So, you know, yeah, if everyone's okay with a consensus, I will draft the resolution, we'll look at it, and we'll do a work session on the 30th.
Can we accomplish what we need to accomplish in a work session in the limited number of hours that we have with Brent's schedule on a meeting? Is it an effective work session if we go from 4 until 5:30? Or do we need to come earlier?
Like set it from 3:30 to 5:30?
5:30,
It's fine with me. Earlier is fine.
which is fine with me too. I just, I just need to, I just wonder if we only have, if we're limiting ourselves to an hour and a half, is that enough time to have an effective work session?
And I think if you put it at 3:30, anybody who just logs on at 4 will come on and see that we're in a work session, and it will have started early, but it was just a work session with no comments and can be recorded, whatnot, so.
We should clear, that thinking up with Craig, but I'll put it on in the resolution for 3:30.
Yeah,
And then we
I
can
think
talk
that's-
about it and get some weigh-in from Craig as to whether that's feasible.
When school is out, there's times I'm gonna have Lottie,
She
and Nick
can-
gets off by 4. I mean, I can figure things out, but.
Well, she can come. She can come and put her social studies credit in.
She might like it.
Okay, I think that covers what our agenda is. Is there any other?
I just want to let everybody know, so I don't think it's going to affect anything, but I'm a year late on taking the sabbatical from work. I was offered it last year, never found time to actually take the offered thing, but I finally am going to be able to take it. I'm going to take it in May. I'll go May through the middle of June. So it shouldn't affect much at all, but I will be in and out of town, so having things focused on these Tuesdays is a big help to me, because I don't have to linger around town if I'm wanting to go somewhere. So, and then after that, I'm leaving probably around June 15th or shortly thereafter, and I'm gonna head home with the kiddos so they can spend time with the grandparents and family back home. But, so I'll be working virtually for July, basically, the end of June and July, but I'll be at all the meetings, just virtually. Just wanna give a heads up.
I've done the meeting from Toronto. It's doable.
Yep.
That's the beauty about having hybrid meetings, is that you don't necessarily have to be tied to one spot.
Yep.
And the budget, kind of, let's see. We have to have the tentative budget for 2025 to the council on or before the first meeting in May, which would be May 7th. Which is why trying to schedule these work sessions will be really helpful after that, because we'll need to work on the budget. So be thinking, you're going to have to look at a tentative budget on May 7th, because we have to set the public hearing dates. There are some other public hearing dates we may need to set, and we'll need to have a discussion specifically that we have never given our employees cost of living adjustments or raises, and I think we need to have that serious discussion in the budget meeting. So that's my other. Anybody else? Okay, it is 11:53. Anyone?
Motion to adjourn the work session.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
I'm not jumping to get out.
Anyone opposed? All right, I'm